Hello everybody, my name is Kate Olaf. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's video. I am here with my boy Dalton.
What's going on?
He is a lender with Movement Mortgage here in Southern Arizona, and we wanted to just kind of quickly make a video regarding the state of the market and some important metrics you guys should know when making decisions either selling or buying a home. So I'll kind of start us off, and it's something that I've talked about quite a bit, honestly, both on my channel and just, with clients in general, and that's our absorption rate. And essentially what the absorption rate is it tracks the velocity of the market. And so, Dalton, we talked about this metric this morning in our sales meeting, but essentially what it tells us is the amount of months it would take in any given market for the inventory to completely sell out. So for instance, Dalton and I are located in Tucson, Arizona, so we kind of service the surrounding areas. And for Pima County, which is the county we fall under, as for April 2024, we had a month supply of 3.43 months. Okay, so basically what that tells us is that if no other inventory came on the market, it would take 3.5 months for all of the inventory to completely sell out. And so the way it tracks this is basically by taking the amount of listings on the market and then divides it by the average days on market. And so that gives us our month supply. What this means for you, especially if you're a consumer, what this means for you is anything that's between 0 and 4 months is generally a really good seller's market because it's a high velocity moving market. Anything between 4 and 6 months is kind of an even market. So whether you're a buyer or seller, it really comes down to the property specifically that you're either selling or buying in regards to whether or not you have the upper hand in that deal. And then anything 6 months and above is an extremely good buyer's market. Okay, it's a super slow moving market. And so I want to give you guys, before I hand it off to Dalton, just a quick understanding as I cross-reference the current state of the market today versus back in 2008. So again, right now we just are in about a 3.5 month supply. So it's an extremely good seller's market right now, generally speaking. Back in April of 2008 for Pima County, we hit a 10.26 month supply. So that's triple what we are today.
Right.
In 2008, which was, the start of the real estate crash. And so, again, absorption rate, otherwise known as month supply, super important metric to understand, even if you're a professional like Dalton and I, or especially if you are a consumer looking to either buy and sell, regardless of when that is. It's just a very important metric to track. Dalton, we were briefly talking about interest rates. What do you, and I'll hand it off to you, but I firmly believe that regardless of rates, supply and demand, which we can track via the absorption rate, really dictates pricing. So how have you seen, especially recently with increase in rates, that affect kind of supply and demand?
Yeah, Kate, so one thing we were talking about this morning was what extrinsic, what's the word?
Intrinsic?
Extrinsic?
I don't know.
Outside factors,
yeah.
Whatever you call it. So
yeah.
We're talking about these outside factors that affect, supply and demand. And one of the big things that we were talking about was the increase in household formations versus new properties, coming to market, new properties being built, mainly new properties being built. And that has a big impact on appreciation values because, the big economic thing is when demand is up, supply goes down, that increased costs, right?
Right.
Because there's more competition in the market, right? So we have seen the big increase in household formations with not enough increase in new permits for builds. So that means that there's more buyers in the market than there are homes being built. So naturally that's going to cause an increase in home prices because you're going to have, bidding wars, more competition for homes. So we like to look at things like that have an impact on, new homes being purchased, and how that applies to financing as well, because there's a couple of factors that have an impact on you attaining financing. One of them being how many bids are on the home, because that might affect, your purchase price. That might affect how many seller concessions you can get. And I'm sure you can attest to this.
Yeah.
And that will go directly back to the absorption rate. And when your absorption rate is low, right, you have a better seller's market.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're going to have more buyers in the market who want to purchase the same home, who are going to, do whatever it takes to buy that home. And what that means is they're going to be paying top dollar, less seller concessions.
So that makes sense. So what, if I'm understanding you correctly, we have more household formations, meaning people who are creating their own household. These are family units. These are people maybe moving out on their own.
New people, getting married, people turning 18 and buying their own home.
Gotcha.
Getting out in the world. So there's a couple of different things.
So we have more of that than the permits that are being allowed to be issued to build more housing.
Right. Yeah.
So we have an influx of household formations, not enough housing. Got it. So that would affect the supply and demand because there's more demand than there is supply. Therefore, that affects our absorption rate and the reason we're seeing it at a low. We have seen an increase year over year in the absorption rate, and that is something we were discussing today. Do you think that's because of rates?
I think rates may be one of the factors. In the most recent history, inflation's been a big thing, right?
Yeah.
We've seen a huge increase in inflation, and that's just overall cost of living. So not just, buying a home, but also affording groceries, getting gas, paying your utilities. So, with that increase in absorption rate, that means you don't have as many people buying homes, right? You have more people being renters, staying with their parents. And I think that when you compare that to the level of inflation, it has a direct correlation, right? Because when you have not enough people being able to afford these things, that can have an impact on your home ownership. And I think that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that it's a lack of understanding and education on the pros and cons versus renting. And, the big thing that everyone says, and it's kind of cliche, but renting, you're paying 100% interest. With mortgage, you were seeing 3%, 4% for the past couple years. We've seen an increase, but 7% is still below 100%.
Yeah, no, I'll take 7% all day. So, and I know this morning, we kind of forecasted where rates are headed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's looking like between kind of 6 to 7% is kind of going to be the going average over the next few years is what they're forecasting.
Yep.
And really they can't go much lower because if they go lower, back to Dalton's original point, there's still not enough freaking housing for the demand that's there. So even if they lowered rates, what that's going to do, because there's not enough housing, it's just going to create a higher demand because now to borrow money is cheaper. So now more people can be qualified, and that's just going to create an increase in pricing, like we saw in 2021, in 2020, the crazy freaking real estate market, right? And so I think it's important to understand, kind of to your point, regardless of where rates are headed from this point on, this is kind of the new normal, right?
Yeah.
These kind of 6s, these 7s, and as we looked at for the past 10 years back, to 2014, the average was, between the 4s and 5s. And so, I think if you're on the fence as a buyer, a consumer as a buyer, at some point you're going to have to face the reality, which is at what point does buying make sense for me? Depending on where the rates go, right? And if your sole purpose to buy is simply based on the fact you want a cheaper rate, I don't really see that happening. And the demand is definitely not stopping for some time. So, maybe Dalton share with us some of the forecasts here.
Yeah, so I think it takes a bit of a broader perspective than just looking at the interest rate alone when you're looking at purchasing a house. Because, interest rate is one thing, but if you take kind of a bigger perspective of the entire situation when you buy a house. Let's say that you get an interest rate of 7% when you purchase a house. Interest rates go down in a year, you're like, man, I should have waited to buy a house to get a 1% lower rate. But here's the thing, if you look at appreciation in home values year over year, and I'm sure Cade can attest to this. At least in our market, we're a bit of a growth market compared to other, demographics, other areas in the country. We're seeing about 4 to 5%, maybe a little bit higher in Saudi.
Probably 3 to 6% per year.
So if you look at that in the blend between you having that lower interest rate, you're gonna gain value faster than you are paying a higher interest rate.
Right.
And the big thing is if you buy a house now, you gain that equity, you're not stuck with the rate, but you are stuck with the house, right?
Correct.
Which is a good thing. You want to be stuck with the house because you want to gain that wealth through home ownership. And looking at the Fannie Mae forecast, and this is a pretty solid source to use, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 2024 we're looking at anywhere from 6.7 in Q1 to a forecast of 7% Q4. Going into 2025, we're expecting a 6.9 Q1, 6.6 Q4. So there's not a huge spread that you're seeing in change in interest rate. However, going back to the pros of home ownership, you want to make sure you're in a payment you're comfortable with. That's not a question. So you want to look at your monthly payment, and you want to look at, how am I going to gain wealth through owning this property? And that's by getting in it as soon as possible, and then you can refinance later, and that's something that we can guide you through if you're in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dalton, for your time today. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Basically, the bullet points that we want you to take away is this. Remember the absorption rate, regardless of when you shop or when you go to buy or even sell. Understand the absorption rate. Understand how you're positioned in the real estate market. Number 2, rates are not looking to change anytime soon. And so if that's your only thing that's holding you back from purchasing a home, understand that the demand is not gonna, overnight just drop for home prices, to come down and that higher rate to start making sense for you. So for you to wait and hold off, you're really just kicking the can down the road. Instead, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get you in a program and a plan with Dalton that will get you in a payment that you can afford and are comfortable with. That way you can start building equity today and not waiting 2-3 years down the road. Anything else?
No, I think the big synopsis of this is don't step over dimes to pick up pennies. You don't want to wait for the rates to go down to buy a house for $20,000 more.
Yeah.
Because if you would have bought a year ago and you would gain that $20,000 of equity, you'd be $20,000 richer by paying $50 to $100 more a month.
Right.
That's $1,200 to gain $20,000 in equity.
For sure.
It's a big thing.
For sure. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, let us know in the comments below and we can chat there. Otherwise, our contact info will be in the description for you to get in contact with us. Like, comment, subscribe for more videos like this, and we will see you in the next one.